Welcome to Selinco Live News Capsule. Is Port City Colombo a bold new frontier or a sovereignty dilemma in disguise? We unpack the geopolitical undercurrents and economic ambitions behind Sri Lanka's most controversial mega project with Nevanka Jayatilleke, lecturer in politics, international relations and political economy. With UN and foreign affairs experience under his belt, he brings sharp insight into the complex intersections of power, policy and Port City's global implications. How do you respond to critics who say that Port City is basically dead in the water?
My go-to response would be to simply think about what the Port City project looked like 10 years ago, and then reflect on how it looked 5 years ago, and then just reflect on how it looks today. There has been a tremendous amount of development and advancement over the past few years alone, which I think belies the assumption that it's simply a dead-in-the-water project. There's a lot more that's going to happen, and it's an exponential increase in development. And I think that it's only going to get much better as time goes on.
Why does the Port City matter for Sri Lanka? Why do we need it?
This is the biggest opportunity that we've had to construct an avenue of economic growth and development that we can take full ownership of. Oft people have spoken about how Sri Lanka has missed so many buses down the road of development. Well, this is the first time we are constructing such an opportunity for ourselves. And I think that over time, as many more successive governments and generations of Sri Lankans start to make the fullest utility of it, there will be a greater expansion of investment, opportunities, jobs, and the like for all of Sri Lanka, which will hopefully trickle down to the lowest denominators as well.
So where are you seeing the challenges in this run?
The challenges, of course, lie in political policy stability, I would say. I think the Port City project is such a mammoth initiative that every government does take a little bit of a step back when they try to understand the gravity of what they need to do in order to make it reach its fullest potential. But I think every government should then understand that it's not them that are going to complete it. One will eventually down the line, but it's about setting that foundation steady for everyone else. And so policy consistency is, I think, the biggest challenge that the Port City project has.
What industries do you see thriving in the Port City?
I think there are quite a few opportunities for the financial sector primarily. I believe maritime logistics is also a strong opportunity. But I think we also have an underrepresented idea of marketing Sri Lanka as an education and a healthcare hub regionally. Now, Port City is interested, I believe, in bringing in international organizations, reputed universities and healthcare providers to fulfill that purpose. So for the purposes of medical tourism or even education, I think Port City has a niche that we should explore a bit more.
So what do we have and what don't we have in place when you look at the Port City?
There are quite a few things that still need to be developed. Now, say, for example, we lack the necessary critical infrastructure to make the Port City develop into what it can. We don't have the necessary infrastructure for airline connectivity. We don't have customs processors in order. We have a very limited regulatory framework, although there are actions being taken in that regard. I think we are still at a foundational level in making investors feel comfortable with coming into Port City. However, over the past couple of years, what I realized is that advancement of policy and the improvement of regulatory frameworks has meant that it's slowly getting there. So I think our location in itself is something that is quite marketable. I know that people speak about us in relation to Dubai or Singapore as well. And I don't want to harp too much on a geostrategic location because that's something that's also spoken to death about. But it is true enough that there is some strategic value to our location as a country, which I think is something unique to us.
What sets Port City Colombo apart from regional giants like I mentioned, Dubai and Singapore?
I think it really lies in our ability to market Sri Lanka as a center of, as a crossroads between regions. Dubai, of course, has, as does Singapore, a legacy and a scale that is very difficult to match at this point. However, because of the nature of Sri Lanka's positioning, because of the nature of our traditionally non-aligned foreign policy, there is a kind of comfort in the way that investors may have. We are far apart from geostrategic tensions, whether it's in East Asia and the Middle East. And so there's a stability that we can offer and a location that we can offer that provides support for maritime services, etc., that the other locations might not. However, it will be a challenge to get to that standard of scale and legacy and the reputation that those and that our peer regions have in order to make Port City what it could be.
So you've said that the Port City Colombo will outlast politics. In a country where politics is everything, what makes you think so?
That was probably the most ambitious statement that I made, but I genuinely think so because Port City project, like I mentioned earlier, is not something that can be fully owned by a single government. And I think there is strength in that. Because as governments come in, successively realizing that they may only be responsible for part of the success of this project, there is simply value in saying that, well, we were responsible for this part of it. We were the ones that made it more accessible and so forth. And that makes it very likely to me that the project in itself is going to be rehearsed and perceived more for its economic value than its political implications. The fact that it has lasted as long as it has since its conception is perhaps a symbol of this. And I think that's why it will last politics, or perhaps we should say more so than outlasting politics, it might outplay politics.
So do you think Port City Colombo is sort of a make or break for Sri Lanka in terms of economic stability and also FDIs?
This is a rather volatile political, economic environment that we live in, particularly internationally. We are, as a country, of course, going through a continuing crisis that needs a fair degree of keen policy to overcome. I don't say that it's make or break, but I think that it is probably our best avenue for building a sustainable means forward. Everything else is something that Sri Lanka needs to grapple with. We are rather slow on adaptation, for example. So maybe this is the one thing that we can genuinely say and construct as our own that can carry us forward.
In 10 years' time from now, what do you think people will say about Port City Colombo?
I think in 10 years' time, they'll say that Port City is probably the next big investment. I think inklings of that thought are already sprouting across multiple sectors of the business environment. And investors are coming in. But 10 years from now, they'll realize that the gold rush is coming in and you need to make sure that you have a foot in the doorway before everyone else takes a slice of the pie. I think that perception is what Port City will build over the next 10 years. It has been exponential growth over the past 5 years, and it will only get bigger moving forward.
Thank you so much, Nevanka. Lovely having you on the show.
Thank you so much, Savithri.
Kaleidoscope is on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. That's 4 digital channels. Please do subscribe, follow, and like us for more.
You focus on your goals. We will take care of the risks. Silly